This past Sunday, just as the crowds did over 2,000 years ago, we welcomed Jesus triumphantly into Jerusalem. We sang out, "Oh, magnify the Lord, for he is worthy to be praised. Hosanna, blessed be the rock of our salvation." I don't know if you've ever noticed that the liturgy of Palm Sunday, just like the crowds of 2,000 years ago, begins in jubilation and then very quickly moves into sorrow as we sing, my God, why have you abandoned me?" as our responsorial psalm. That began our Holy Week. We continued Holy Week with a Seder meal on Monday, the Chrism Mass on Tuesday, a Tenebrae service last night, or Wednesday night, and then the Mass of the Lord's Supper last night. All three of the Synoptic Gospels, those are the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have Jesus predicting his own passion, death, and resurrection 3 times. We are reading from Luke's Gospel this year, so let me share his version of that first prediction. This occurs right after he asked people, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" And they reply, "Some say you're John the Baptist, others say you are Elijah, some say you're an ancient prophet arisen." And then he asks, "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answers him, "You are the Messiah." And then he tells them exactly what being the Messiah means. He said, "The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and on the 3rd day be raised." You know, it's somewhat easy to predict your own death, I think. Any one of us can do things that make people so angry that they just might kill us. But to predict your resurrection and have it happen, now that's an accomplishment. And Jesus does that 3 times. This past Tuesday at the Chrism Mass up in Indianapolis, this is the annual Mass where the oils used throughout the Archdiocese are blessed by Archbishop Thompson. Also at this Mass, the priests renew their priestly commitment, much like a couple might do on their anniversary. At that Mass on Tuesday, the first reading comes from the 61st chapter of the prophet Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because he has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives and release to prisoners, to announce a year of favor from the Lord and a day of vindication by our God." And as I listened to that reading, all of that sounded very familiar to me, not just because we read it at every Chrism Mass, but because we also hear it when Jesus returns to his hometown and preaches for the first time in the synagogue at Nazareth. He unrolls a scroll and he reads that passage, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me." And then he says this, "Today this passage is fulfilled in your hearing." And in saying that, he's claiming for the first time to be the Messiah. And that's what gets him to where we are today, Good Friday. But what struck me this past Tuesday was the completion of that passage. We don't hear this when Jesus returns to Nazareth. But Isaiah continues, "To comfort all who mourn, to place on those who mourn in Zion a diadem instead of ashes, to give them oil of gladness instead of mourning, a glorious mantle instead of a listless spirit." That really struck me this week. I mean, I've heard it every year, but it struck me particularly this year because I've encountered so many people who have a listless spirit. I've encountered so many people who are mourning, who would love to have a crown of glory instead of ashes. My friends, Good Friday is the beginning of the fulfillment of that promise, but it's only the beginning. As I said, anyone can predict his own death. Get enough people angry and you will be killed. But if you can also predict your resurrection, then you've got something. Today, we will leave this church once again in silence. We spend these next hours with Jesus in the tomb. But come back Sunday for the fulfillment of his promise.